All right, the two-handed swing. All right, there we go, the two-handed swing. So we have worked our way up to this drill. This is the centerpiece ballistic drill. Ballistic means there's a explosion phase and a float phase. So there's a point where the kettlebell is floating. Most drills, a lot of drills that you see out there are grinds, squatting, deadlifting. We've done a number already ourselves where there's constant pressure. But this one has a float phase. So we need to have a part of this where there's no weight to the kettlebell. It is floating at that point, like a bullet would float to the target. There's an explosion and a float. So we have to create that. So this drill will be our primary ballistic drill, and we'll set up our later ballistic drills. So getting this one right is worth it. Take the time, get it right. So let's start with the setup. With the deadlifts, you know, I was right over top of the bell. That's how we did these, right over top of the bell. And we got here with the butt to the wall and all the pieces of that, the hinge stretch, all the pieces of that, the leg on the wall, all of these. So it's led us to the point where we have the room to do this drill. So now to do this though, we need to have that pendulum effect. So we need the kettlebell out in front so we can set up a swing-like motion right out of the gate. So the kettlebell is out in front of my feet a little ways. I'll put it too far out. And you can see it's too far out, but that's okay because when I go to do my setup, which is do the setup just like we would for the bottom of the butt to the wall. You know, the wall hinge. Right there, that long spot there. Now if it's too far out, I rock out to it and then just slide back into the position. The kettlebell will just slide on the floor to the right spot. It's a great way to find where your distance is. Down, sit back, slide. So just like we did with the deadlift, right? We have to hold it with the armpits. So make sure that as you do this, the arms aren't up by your ears. They're down on your ribs, right in here. And we're set up and ready to go. So when I go to push the kettlebell back through my legs, it needs to be like something's blocking my arm here. I'm not throwing it through and throwing it through. I'm pushing it back like I'm swimming it through, like there's pressure here. So it's a hike motion with my armpit. So it's hike. And then it'll just fall back. And as it falls, you just ride that up and we start. So it's hike with the armpits, hike, and then we go into the extend. And the extension is full hip extension to lockout. And the kettlebell needs to be low when this happens. A mistake I see a lot is the kettlebell's way up here when the hips lock out. It's too late. We want it to be here. See how low the hands are, which allows for the float. The kettlebell will float up to about chin height here. I'll let it fall and play chicken with it. I'll absorb the energy coming down, redirect it back, right back up to the top. Now the kettlebell doesn't go out and down below my knees. It stays way up here, way up in my crotch here. The seam of my pants will be rubbing right along the inside of my arm. So right up in here, nice and high. So hike, extend, float, wait for it, absorb it, redirect it, pop it back up, and it floats. Now the breathing will be sniff in, blow out. Just like that. So, don't do too many at first. Just do a couple at a time, 5 to 10. Hike it, extend. And when it goes back down, rather than stand up, I just let it swing out to the start spot, set it down, and stand up. This will also give you an idea of how far away to be from the bell. As you do more and more, you'll know just where to stand. Up and right back out to there. So this would be the setup. So I may even want to wiggle it out just a little at first to practice sitting back and getting the tilt and getting the kettlebell right in the right spot there. So that's the kettlebell swing. Now in between your sets, you need to practice resting loose. You want to try and be loose. Think of ragdoll. Think of a dog shaking water off. You want your muscles to try and be shaking on the bone so that when you step back up, you're ready to give it power again and to tighten and push. Relax, tighten, relax, tighten. So as you repeat these more and more, it becomes very important to stay loose between the sets as they add up. This is what we use for our conditioning to a large extent. So practice resting in between. Set up. And done. Let's go over a couple of common mistakes. First one I see is rounding over at the bottom down here. Now we've practiced this already, but to drive this feeling home, it can be a good idea. Get down on the deck, peel yourself up off the floor, get this feeling of extending through your spine. And you'll know this because a friend will watch you or you'll video yourself and you'll see this. You want to make sure you keep this here. Even when you're reaching down through your legs with the kettlebell, you can't round through your legs. Stay up. So hit the deck, get this feeling. Up, grab the bell, get this feeling here. Grab the bell. Keep it, especially at the bottom. Here, here. Keep this up and out, flat and neutral, not to be confused with vertical, neutral, here. All right, the next mistake would be not finishing at the hips. You go to stand up and you squeeze and the hips just sort of stop. We're not getting the finish of the hips. Hips need to come through and lock out. We've talked about lock out often. It's quads, butt, and stomach. Squeeze really tight here. Lock out, lock out. If we're coming through and we're not getting that finish of the hips, then we're doing some lifting up here and we're getting a lot of it from the quads like we're jumping or squatting, and we're trying to make this be a hip dominant drill. Get those glutes back in the game. So we need to be pushing through the hips. So a good way to get sensitive to this motion is by doing a hip bridge. So having a towel or something to put between your knees, keep your feet together. And you'll just do a few lifts where you lift and squeeze your butt and feel your hips doing the lifting. Your hips and your glutes doing the lifting. And this is the feeling you're going to try and carry over to the swing when you stand up. This is just to make you sensitive to your glutes doing the lifting. Again, this is not a guaranteed fix, but it can get you sensitive to it. So then I stand up with that feeling of bridging and standing up, grab the bell, test it out. Squeezing with the glutes. So it's using the hip bridge to finish your hips. The next mistake I see a lot is scooping at the knees. So what is scooping? Scooping is when I go to stand up and I'm squeezing my glutes to bring my hips forward, that I let my knees scoop under. That's a scoop under would be scooping. So it'd be scoop, extend. Scoop, extend. So we don't want this scooping in there. So sometimes it's hard to break that habit of wanting the knees to go forward there. And when you do that, it takes up a lot of your ankle space there. When you do it, take some ankle space to do that. So by adding a 2x4 or anything that holds your toes up, you take out a lot of that space already. So when I go to come forward, it's really hard for me to take my knees way out in front because I've used up the space already. And it forces me to extend through my hips. Now this is not guaranteed fix, but it does help you get the feeling of having to extend your hips more to stand up versus scooping under. So you would do something like 4 or 5 swings with your toes up. Set it down on the deck. Keep that feeling. Extend. Extend your hips. Extend your hips. Squeeze your butt. Squeeze your butt. And out. Going back and forth. Getting sensitive to this scooping and keeping that from happening. Use a 2x4, use the handles of the kettlebell, something to get your toes up, back and forth. Practice that a little. So the last mistake that we're going to talk about is flicking the bell and having the kettlebell sort of be flipping up and down out here at the end. It's kind of flipping up. You're not allowing it to form a straight line. It should form a straight line right out through your hand, right up your arm, out to the kettlebell, up and down. So if it's flicking, a good way to get your hands out of it is to turn the kettlebell so that the handle's this way. Grab a towel or something you can count on to stay locked in there and not tear on you. And you do some swings with this. Now I'm going to tilt the bell, get the towel up into the top corner there, and then I'm just going to do a swing. And I want to practice seeing the kettlebell be an extension of the straight line here. Should be nice and straight and out. So by taking the towel and then taking the towel out, just trying to get that feeling of a nice long straight line, a pendulum, an explosion, a float, controlled float, and control, and down. So the towel swing, help out the hands.